Hello and welcome to Digital Blackface. I'm Poe.
And I'm Jay.
Once again, welcome to a different kind of podcast just to catch you up on some of the more interesting topics you might stumble across on your Twitter feed, one in particular.
Or just the mess that's society, because, this is always the fun stuff.
You said it, not me. This is episode one, interview with a map. Map
Maps, my favorite.
Maps are something of a delicate topic and something that really is only known about on Twitter. So most people don't really know about maps. So Jay, would you mind giving us a definition on what you would define as a map?
A person generally that's over the age of consent who is attracted almost exclusively to people that are under the age of consent.
Well, you heard her. Now, why are we talking about maps? Well, we have a special guest joining us on our first episode of Digital Blackface, a map, if you haven't already guessed by the title. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Lucifer.
Hi, Lucifer. Can I ask you on what you would think a map is if it's a different definition than what Jay said?
Well, technically, by law, you have to be 16 to be diagnosed as a pedophile. Um, but generally, a pedophile is someone attracted to prepubescent children.
Okay, and were you diagnosed or did you self diagnose?
I'm self-diagnosed.
Okay. Could I ask why you believe that you're attracted to before I say that, what's your age of attraction, by the way?
Well, every single age.
Every single age. Okay. Uh, is there a upper limit? I mean, a lower limit to that? Lucifer? I think we lost Lucifer.
It might have been. His mic was a little bit quiet there. Also, Poe Chat is saying that your uh, volume is a bit low.
Okay, my volume's low. No problem. Okay. So we've lost Lucifer. Uh, so, Jay, would you mind? Let me just talk to you real quick. When it comes to maps, how do you've interacted with a bunch of them on Twitter? How do you feel about them?
It's really hard to say because I know my whole thing is that is very loud. I'm not sure what that noise was. But for the most part, if they are an adult that is very openly being attracted to children and just underage people in general, then I am not too happy of a camper
I mean,
for
that's
obvious reasons. But there are also minors that have been describing themselves as maps. And that's more confusing than anything because, well, you're underage, so naturally you're going to also be attracted to people that are not of age.
yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like, although I haven't spoken to a lot of maps themselves or really seen much who are underage, I have met a lot of map allies around the age of 12 to 15 who were very, very insistent on how they believed that maps were okay and understandable and all right, and even should be allowed to get into relationships with people who were younger than the age of consent, despite knowing what that meant.
Well, that's because they had probably a crush on these people that were of age.
I mean, yeah,
And
that's
they want to justify. We might have Lucifer back.
Lucifer. You
One
back?
sec.
Hello.
Hello,
There you
Lucifer.
are. We lost you there
Um,
for a minute.
yeah. Sorry about that. My internet just cut out for a second.
Is there any possible way that you could turn yourself up? The chat's been saying that you're super quiet.
Oh, is this better?
Try a bit more.
Um, is this better? I didn't.
Like,
I'm
I've
so.
personally got your volume for myself turned all the way up, and you're still a little bit quiet.
Oof. I'm as close to them, I think.
That is better.
Is there a way you can turn me up somewhere else?
No, I
I
think
don't
you
think
should be
I can.
fine. You should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I'll just
think that should be able to be like edited in for after this. I think Burner would be able to do that.
okay.
Okay.
Already on it, fellas. It should be working in chat. I got her all the way turned up.
Okay, that's great. So, Lucifer, we were asking after Age of Attraction and your diagnosis, like, how do you feel specifically about? Are you a no contact map or pro contact?
Oh, I'm anti-contact strictly.
Okay, and how do you feel about maps that are pro contact?
I generally dislike them, and and I don't know why it's a controversial opinion, apparently, but it is. I don't like talking to them or being around them.
Okay,
Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, I suppose.
because the real issue with maps on Twitter is that people have a general issue. Can you understand the general issue that people have with maps being public on Twitter?
I understand why people have an issue with it, yes. Because I had an issue with it at first when I heard about them, when I was unaware that I was a map.
And do you think that people are justified in their opinion of maps based off of the idea of pedophilia in general?
That, I mean, I don't think they're justified. No. I think that they're misinformed on the subject.
Okay, would you mind informing us on how you feel about that?
Well, it's hurtful that a lot of people think that every single map is a monster or that they're going to be a monster in the future. When I myself know that that's absolutely wrong. I would never want to harm a child in my life.
See, personally, for me, I can understand where you're coming from. It's just that I myself have dealt with adults who were, I guess, what you would term as minor attracted people who said the same thing or something similar, and yet they still acted upon those urges towards children within my life and their lives.
Yeah, I understand. That happens a lot. I've personally experienced something like that. But I feel like most predators would say that. It's kind of a grooming thing. But I feel like on the internet, talking to someone personally, that they wouldn't lie about that.
I mean, don't you think that on the internet would be exactly the place they'd lie about it?
Well,
Because on the internet, there's no one to really confirm that what they're saying is true. And with that, they could essentially enter into communities that would be against against pro contact maps, if you know what I mean.
oh, I see where you're getting at. That pro context line about the get into community, anti contact.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that happens. I'm sure often. I don't like it because I'm uncomfortable being around pro contact.
I mean, that's completely understandable. Aren't you underage yourself?
Yes, I'm 16 years old. I just turned 16 last.
So like, I'm just gonna mention something. Like, I noticed your a bio on Twitter, and you listed a large number of things. Would you mind? Would you be okay with me sharing that?
Yeah, that's
Okay, so on your bio, you listed that you were a pedophile, a neophile, a nepiophile. Sorry, is that correct?
yes.
Okay, a pedophile, a nepiophile, and for those who are unaware of what nepiophile means, it means someone who has a attracted to children under the age of 5, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, nepiophile, zoophile, and necrophiliac. So all of those together, don't you? Are you sure you might not just be confused about what you're feeling? Not saying that you're not those things, of course, but
Yeah.
don't you think that you might have some confusion, being that you're 16 and you're
Oh,
going through a lot of changes at 16? Don't you think you might have some confusion about exactly what it is you're attracted to?
well, I don't think there's any confusion being sexually attracted to animals and children and dead bodies.
Okay, so the maybe it's just hard for me to understand because it's just hard for me to understand how those correlate or how those could, you know, could generate from one situation. So it's the pedophile and nephrophile. Okay, those fit generally together, but the zoophile and necrophile come out of left field for me, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I understand. I from experience, I've seen a lot of other maps also have more than one paraphilia. It's kind of a common thing.
Oh, that's another new word, paraphilia. Would you mind uh, describing what paraphilia means for the audience?
Oh, well, it's an attraction or fetish seen as taboo in society.
Thank you. Jay, you got anything to add?
Not right this second. It's more that I'm just wondering if it is something to do with the age that you are. Like when I was 16, I was confused about a whole lot of things. At the time, I thought maybe I was bi. I had a phase where I thought I might have been trans there. Like it wasn't until I'm gonna say it was probably when I was in college when I started just kind of realizing like what was going on with me personally.
I can say something of this, something similar. At least when I was, at least for about 2 years in early high school, I thought that I might have been at least asexual or bi because I didn't. I was confused in general, but I did grow out of that. So I'm not saying that you're confused, of course, but don't you think that your age and your hormones might play a part into this? Because it is a quite a list of paraphilias.
Well, it is quite a list, yes, but I maybe my hormones might have something to do with my sexual drive in this, but I think I'm the way I am, and I'm going to stay like this.
Okay, I mean that's again that's understandable. You know yourself. I mean, who else knows you but you? But the very idea of pedophilia in society, how do you feel that's going to be? Do you ever feel that's going to be accepted? How do you feel about the
I
MAP movement in general?
I think it's very unlikely for it to be accepted, and if it is, it's going to be far, far, far in the future. I'm probably going to be not there by then, but I feel like our movement is a good one and it's justified, and there's lots of people that could benefit from it, and lots of people already have benefited from it. I know I have, and lots of other people have been swayed away from killing themselves even because of the community. So it's helping people.
Do you think that the MAP movement should be part of the LGBTQ movement?
No, I don't think that. And I don't think many maps actually believe that.
Okay, so Jake, would you mind
Hmm?
oh, do you have anything to add to that?
Not on that particular thought. But there was a good question in the chat for our guest, Lucifer. Have you been and talked to any like sort of professional about any of this?
No. I'm too scared to even tell people that I know personally, and I'm way too terrified to tell a professional that might even report me because they think I might hurt someone.
See, I think that's another thing that's part of this is you have a lot to figure out right now, and the best course of action for that would be to talk to someone. Like The thing of it is, I know that it's scary. I was terrified to go and talk to my therapist about when I first realized I might have been schizophrenic, because I thought that they would like ship me away. I didn't know what was about to happen. But it also takes some time to realize that these therapists, these people to talk to, are under a contract that's morally binding, legally binding, etc. And you can't really, they aren't able to like tell anyone. I believe I don't know if it's at 18 or 16, but even then, they wouldn't be able to disclose this to your parents.
Disclose what to their parents?
Oh, we have a guest on the stream. His name's Argent.
We do.
Argent, yeah, he wanted to enter and just say a few words.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Speak up.
Can
That's
you
that's about as loud as he'll get for now.
They say we're doing good, bud.
I can't really speak up so much because I don't have my headphones anymore.
well, if I speak louder, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
So you said you had a question to ask?
I did. What is your defense on trying to defend the fact that children can consent?
Oh. Well, I don't think they can consent. And I dislike people who say that they can. I feel like they're promoting harmful views.
So, what is your position then?
Children cannot consent, and they're harmed by any sexual or romantic relationship by
Okay,
adults.
then what? Are you advocating for like teenagers, like 11 to 14?
No,
What are you doing?
I think at least the age of consent should be 16.
16 is a very, very chaotic age
Uh,
for people.
well,
I mean, to be fair, 16 is also the age of consent for most of the world and 2/3 of the United States.
Yeah, it's also the age of consent for Japan.
That's also there's also a clause in
Plenty of
most
fucking
states.
people that fucking defend the 14 age, like Japan.
Hmm.
And there's plenty of people that defend the age of consent being like 10,
oh,
like Iraq, and the Middle East.
Those are a bit
yeah.
different than
They're
most
extreme,
places
but
we-
they're still evidential for people that would, argue for these things to be legal in the United States.
I mean, but I don't think the United States would take guidance from those countries, especially not at the very least their age of consent.
Absolutely not. But that's the entire point of why we're here, isn't it? Why do you think that children can consent?
He said that he doesn't think children can consent.
You came here with a hot take, and you kind of you kind of blew your stack on that one, buddy. So Arjun, do you have anything to add, or like are you just for no pro contact? We want to
I'm
move
gonna
this.
wait.
We want to move this train along. All right.
Okay,
I haven't heard a single fucking argument against it. So
I mean, the argument
okay, then
against
present your argument. That's what we're kind of.
No. I want to hear about the map.
Like,
What's her opinion?
She's anti-contact and believes the age of consent should stay where it is.
Then let her say it.
I am anti-contact, and I believe the age of consent should be where it is.
And what do you think the age of consent should be?
At the very least 16, and 18 is also good.
All right. And Why do you think that the age of consent should be 16?
It's a good age. I think most people are mature enough at that age.
So if you're a map, why do you think the age of consent should be 16 and not something younger?
Well, I can't help the fact that I'm a map. I can't choose who I'm attracted to. That doesn't change my morals and what I believe in.
Yeah, well, I'm attracted to fucking like foxes getting dicks the size of the galaxy putting in their assholes.
Arjun, I think we're
No.
kind of I think we're kind of going in circles.
Okay.
No, hold up. I'm attracted to that kind of thing because I understand what the fetish is. It's gigantic dicks, it's pregnancy, it's
Dude, what are
kind of
you
an
what are you on
indomitable
about?
urge.
Like, what are you even talking about, bro? We're gonna
Just
do a little bit of this, and we're gonna whoop you out of there.
Okay,
That
so
was
let's
a
get
little
back
weird.
to where we were.
That was a little weird, man.
Yeah, it was.
He
It was
walked
very. It
he
was very weird.
walked in here not knowing what he was talking about. That's kind of cool. But all right, yep.
Yeah, he'd been asking me to let him in for a reason. So
I apparently he said he had something. I thought he was paying attention to the discussion. If
no,
okay,
he
so
literally said in chat that he was going to. He asked me to let him in so he could. I'm not gonna run through this, but he's just said he. Oh yeah, he said he needed to annihilate someone. So
that's
that didn't exactly go too well.
okay. So sorry about that, Lucifer. Back to the topic. You were we know you're anti-contact,
Lucifer just left.
and of course that's of course what happened. So, so that's a thing.
That
So
might have been another connection issue though,
okay,
because he had been a bit quiet there.
yeah. So at least we know that Lucifer he's anti-contact and believes the age of consent should stay where it is. That's a lot more
I
that can be
think
said.
the point that he presents himself as a map is because he thinks that he is attracted to the much younger people. And I
That's
don't think that he's advocating for anyone to do anything to children. But
Lucifer's back.
there we go.
okay.
Sorry.
Lucifer, thank you for coming back. Sorry. We just wanted to we know where you stand on the issue. So the only real question that I had about to ask you was let's see. Oh my god. Jay, could you take over for a second? I forgot the
Did you
thought I
lose
had.
your train of thought?
I did lose my train of thought. I'm an idiot.
It's okay, take your time. But I guess for now, most of what I want to ask would be, I guess it's less so about the map thing right now, but it's the other things that you have listed. You say that you're a
Zoophile?
zoophile and a necrophile. Now, where did how does one figure out these things? Like without giving any details, of course.
I can tell you about how I found out I was a necrophile without getting too, but
Like
it
I
was
can
like
see.
a last.
Hmm?
What were you gonna?
Like I can see kind of with a lot of the lolly type stuff that gets thrown around online, I could see how someone would try and see themselves as a map or something. But the other things just kind of stun me a little, I guess.
Yeah, those were again. I mentioned before. Those are rather strong paraphilias.
Yeah, all three of them are very strong. But because of that, I feel like it's easier to know if you are one because not many people experience feelings like that.
Can I ask you another question though?
Yeah.
So have you ever actually like this issue between there's this a line between fetish and actual paraphilia. So do you actually have you actually been attracted to any child in real life? Not that you need to give any details, but has this ever actually
Yeah,
translated to your real life? Okay.
it has.
So that so it's a definite paraphilia as opposed to just a fetish that you've noticed from whatever media you consume.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And
there was a good question from the chat here. What potential media like influenced this? Is there anything you can think of that like kind of awakened this?
Well, I know I definitely found out or started suspecting that I was a map because of Lolly and Shoda. And I found out I was a necrophiliac through a TV show, actually.
would you mind
So
telling
I,
us what TV show that was?
well, it was Arrested Development, actually.
Huh.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
It was like the last season.
that's an interesting show to get that's an interesting
Yeah.
show to get a paraphilia from. I would have assumed it was something like I don't know, like maybe Law and Order or where a lot of show that had a lot of dead bodies just around.
Arrested Development,
Okay.
weirdly enough.
Now for the zoophile thing, could it have been just like furry type stuff maybe, or was there anything
I,
in particular?
I first noticed it through furry art.
Now
And
was it just regular furry stuff or like feral?
I don't know the difference, honestly.
The
so
anthro is the more prominent furry thing. It's when they have more humanoid features. But feral is basically just straight up animal stuff.
Well, it was regular anthro stuff at first, and then I started looking at feral.
okay, and has again like the pedophilia has the zoophilia been translated into real life? Have you noticed an attraction to any actual animals?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That
But you're also anti-contact with animals, though, right?
Yes, of course.
okay.
Well,
How
let me
did you
let,
ever remember your question?
let me
I
ask. Let me
oh
ask. How did you start this the like Arrested Development is where you got that necrophilia thing from, right? So how do you could you go into more of a specific detail because I'm confused. I me for one I've never seen Arrested Development and I'm sure some people in the audience haven't either. So maybe give us a short description of how you found that and then maybe do the same for zoophilia, just a poke and prod.
Oh. Well, if I explain about Arrested Development, it might have spoilers.
No, you go ahead.
I think that's
Give your
fine.
spoilers.
Yeah,
Give your
That's
spoilers.
fine here.
So, in the last season, there was a character death at the beginning, and the whole season they were trying to figure out who murdered the person. And at the end of the season, it was revealed that it was one of the characters, and he had her body the whole time. So after the show, I was thinking like, what did he do the whole time that he had her? Because it was like a year or something. So that's how
Oh,
that
so it
started.
just started from a stray thought.
Yes,
That's
about
a very interesting development to just to start from just a stray thought. I thought it'd be something a bit stronger, but once you mentioned
yeah.
Arrested Development, I just couldn't think as to what in that show could have led to that. But it seems to me like it wasn't so much Arrested Development as that you already had that idea in mind, and Arrested Development just triggered it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay. There's just so much going on, especially with Twitter. I wanted to actually remember what the thought I had in mind previously. How do you feel about underage map allies, especially because I've noticed like a few 12, 13, and 14-year-olds with that in their bio, like generally on Twitter.
Well, honestly, I think most of them are just antis trying to bait maps and failing. But if it's genuinely an honest miner who's hanging around as an ally, I don't know. The support is nice, but I feel like they shouldn't be there if they aren't a map themselves. They should focus on other things.
Do you feel that having minors in map spaces online could prevent a problem for certain maps who are trying to remain no contact?
I don't. I mean, it might if it's like a generally not mentally well map, but I think for most it's not a problem. It might be a little uncomfortable because some maps do have PD, pedophilic disorder.
See, I feel like in general, Twitter is not a great space for maps to be, especially for not for a lot of reasons, but for one reason in particular. Just yesterday, there was an issue, or 2 days ago, 2 days ago actually, I had to deal with. There was a specific account, a Redman 89 or whatever, who since he joined in January had been sharing images of teenage girls in various states of undress. And generally talking about what he'd like to do with them, what his followers would like to do with them, which one they would pick. And it had gotten to the point where it was blatantly just baiting people to just talk about pedophilia openly. And that's what they were doing. Asking for topless photos of these girls, talking about what they would do to them again several times. And there were over 8,000 people before this account got banned by Twitter who were following and commenting and replying and generally engaging in what was just short of child porn. That's why I feel like Twitter is not a good place for maps to gather because of that, of its nature for someone's stray thought to spread like that and become an entire community.
Especially the ones that are like trying to actually get help and maybe move past this part of themselves. Because I saw the comments on those posts and they were not great. Like I can see how it might sort of influence someone.
Well, that's disgusting that I hadn't heard about that. But honestly, Twitter might be the only place we can go. Not the only, but the best place where we can get the most publicity.
True,
But
publicity. Twitter is great if you're looking for publicity, but if you're looking for a place to actually discuss without it turning into uh, basically egging each other on for this sort of uh, pedophilia light, like not just sharing those sort of images and feelings, especially when it comes to DMs. Somewhere like Reddit would be much better because it actually leads to discussion instead of just the short, fragmented sort of image sharing that would be found on places like Twitter.
well, I've never been on Reddit. Actually, kind of stayed away from it. But so I don't know that much about it. But I don't.
So someone asked.
Actually.
I apologize. Someone asked in chat, why do you need the publicity? I would agree with that. What's with the publicity? Shout out to Turkey Tom. He's in the chat. Turkey Tom in the chat.
Turkey Tom.
Can I get a spam? Can I get a spam F for Turkey Tom? Can I get a spam heart for Poe's voice? Thank you. We may continue.
Okay. So publicity is because we want to get the word maps aren't monsters and that we can actually believe that children can't consent, and there are many different types and not just old white men on their computers all the time looking at child porn, that we're actually very diverse and not the stereotypes.
No, I know that I know very well that the map community or just pedophiles are not just old white men. I've shared a lot of articles. I even collected threads on the issue of female pedophiles in schools. But what it comes down to is that publicity might be the worst thing for the map community at this time, because on Twitter it becomes less about seeking help and seeking help, and more about just gaining that clout, so to speak.
Mhm.
And that clout is dangerous because all it brings from people is negative emotions, because people do not associate the word pedophilia, even if it's no contact. They do not associate with anything good. Like, say you have a tiger in your house and someone tells you, no, that tiger doesn't eat people, it doesn't attack people. You're still not going to want to be around that tiger, or you definitely don't want your kids around that tiger, if you get my point.
I get your point, yes. But the first point you made, in order to get the help that we need the stigma to at least be lessened, because many maps are afraid to go to therapy because of the stigma against us. They assume that the therapist might report them, which has happened before. I've read lots of stories about it. And
I think we're looking at a chicken and the egg problem. Uh, the help is not going to come. The stigma is not going to fade away, because the stigma against pedophilia is only going to grow stronger as it seems. To be honest, I don't think it's going to fade away just because more maps come out into the spotlight, so to speak. It's just going to remain there, but it might grow in strength because people see more maps around, where before they only had their suspicions. The only real thing that could happen is if those maps would seek help and would be visibly seen seeking help, as opposed to assuming that just because you come out into the spotlight, that that fear will, or stigma will vanish just because you're visible. It's it's not gonna happen.
well, I know it's very unlikely, but before, the only maps that anybody ever heard about was child sex offenders, and now more and more non-offending anti-contact maps are coming into the light, and we are gaining more allies by the day. So it's actually helping to erase at least a little bit of the stigma. I know that even I used to be an anti, and like, oh, all pedophiles are monsters, before I even knew about the community.
Okay. Okay. See, can I ask you a question? Because I've
Yeah.
spoken with a few maps on Twitter. I've chatted with them. I've tried to speak with them. They seem to had, when I mentioned the topic of child porn, they seem to think that the child porn that existed was necessary for maps to prevent them from acting on their urges. Referencing the fact that because porn is so prevalent now, that the rate of rape and sexual violence has gone down in general. I tried to argue that there's no such thing as ethical child porn. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel those people are pro contacts, and it's honestly disgusting that they would justify something like child sexual exploitation material. I think it's always wrong. It's never okay to watch, produce, or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. Jay, you got anything to add?
I had a question, but I just sort of lost it. I think a lot of it's been point, but most of my thoughts right now are that maybe if there's going to be a map community for like support and help, that somewhere like Twitter is maybe not the best place for it.
It really isn't.
I am not a fan of Reddit at this point in time. I used to love it, and then it just kind of turned into what it is now. But if anything, I will say it's far better moderated than somewhere like Twitter. And if there's going to be like a community for like outreach and the ones that actually want to better themselves, that might be a place for it. They can start like an archive maybe of therapists that will actually won't report you or anything of that sort.
That seems like an incredible idea. Like, that seems like it would help a
Yeah.
lot more people than just the outing of oneself on Twitter and assuming that'll prevent the hate that springs up when people see pedophile or map.
Well, it won't prevent it, obviously, all in one.
Oh, there's
place.
nothing I don't think that'll ever actually
Yeah.
prevent it from happening.
It's
But I
just-
think awareness and support is the biggest issue right now.
I agree.
Anything you have, Poe?
No, I think that's all I really had to ask. I feel like we've covered a lot today, and I feel like the audience has learned a lot from Lucifer.
Lucifer, did you have anything else that you wanted to add, maybe?
Well, now that you ask, my mind goes blank.
That's how it always goes, it seems.
So thank you for coming on the show today, Lucifer. Thank you for being our first guest, and our we really covered a lot. I think everybody learned a lot. And Jay, if
Mhm.
you want to say anything else.
I think I'm mostly good right now. I'm really glad this went as well as it did. I actually didn't know what I expected until a little while ago when Poe was like, "Oh, by the way, this person is 16."
Yes, because you were getting up and you were getting a little bit angry.
Just a little bit. Like, it's mostly the older adult ones that I have the problems with.
And that's understandable. So if that's all, thank you for listening to the first episode of Digital Blackface. Next episode, we'll be talking a little bit more something related to the issue of maps, but just a bit different. Thank you and goodbye.